After being reborn, I finally decided to let Willow go. She wanted to dedicate herself to research, so I retreated to the mountains to teach. She was attached to her assistant, so I simply called off the engagement. In my past life, I trapped her with family and responsibility. She spent a lifetime as Makoto's mistress, never having a legitimate relationship. But when I fell ill and passed away, I realized that I too had lost an entire life. Chapter 1. After being reborn, I finally decided to let Willow go. She wants to dedicate herself to scientific research, so I'll head into the mountains to teach. She's attached to that little assistant of hers, so I'll just cancel the engagement. In my past life, I trapped her with family and responsibility. She spent a lifetime with Makoto as an illegitimate lover, but it was only when I fell ill and passed away that I realized I had lost my whole life too. After being reborn, the first thing I did was sign up for the teaching program in the mountains. When I saw the transfer notice, I felt like I was in a different world. The leader, who had always advised me, said with a satisfied smile, "Of all the new teachers, you were the one I was most hopeful about. Before, you said your fiancé worked in Beijing and wasn't willing to leave, but now you finally made up your mind." Speaking of Willow, she was a proud daughter of heaven. Not only did she come from a good family, but her career was also bright. She was a key talent being nurtured by the research institute, and her career was on the rise. As for me, I had a stable job, but nothing else stood out. If it weren't for the childhood engagement we had, there was no way she and I could have ended up together. I looked at him firmly and said, "Leader, I want to try doing something meaningful." He patted me on the shoulder and said, "The place where you'll be teaching is tough. You need to be mentally prepared. No matter how hard it is, it can't be worse than the last life." In my past life, I couldn't make up my mind in time, and I never went to teach in the mountains. That became my lifelong regret. The Liu family was pushing us to marry. Less than a month after the wedding, Willow was pregnant. She didn't want to have the child, saying her research project was at a critical stage, and having a baby would affect her progress. But I was so desperate to have a complete family that I took over all the household responsibilities. From then on, I was trapped in the mundane matters of family life. Willow thought it was only natural and rarely returned to our home. She was busy with experiments and publishing papers. As her project progressed, her achievements became more remarkable, and soon she was traveling around the country collecting data. But no matter where she went, Makoto always accompanied her as her assistant. He took care of both her work and personal life. Meanwhile, I was stuck at the Liu family's house, raising children and caring for the elderly. I raised our son by myself and always thought he respected me as his father, until I saw that he was engaged to Makoto's niece. In the private room, he smiled broadly and called out to Makoto without hesitation, "Dad, would you like some tea?" It was only when the wedding was nearing that he informed me. I confronted him, and he responded dismissively, "Dad, my mom and Mr. Ito's work is monumental and important. You're not pursuing any progress yourself, so stop dragging them down." He also said, "You can't be so greedy. They've given you the title of father, but you want my mom's heart too, with your education. Do you even have anything in common with her?" He thought it was only Willow who was trapped by the family, and I, in his eyes, was the unfortunate victim of marriage life. But why should it be that way? When we were young, I asked her what she wanted, and she agreed to the marriage arranged by our elders. Because of that, I gave up the career I truly wanted to pursue. Her research tasks were tough, but I too worked tirelessly taking care of the family. While she was away on business trips, I handled all the meals and needs of everyone at home. In the hardest times, I ran back and forth between my family and the school, 24 hours a day, non-stop. I was the one arranging doctor visits, buying medicine, paying bills. By the time she reached retirement age, she had climbed the ranks and become a leader in the research field. Meanwhile, I was stuck in the small plot of land at the school, seeing fewer and fewer things. At this point, everyone was saying I wasn't good enough for her. Everyone urged me to leave with dignity, and even our son, whom I raised single-handedly, thought Makoto should be standing by her side instead of me, but I refused. After our last argument, he abandoned me in the nursing home and walked away. At the end of my life, no one was at my bedside. I regretted it deeply. If I were to be born again, I would absolutely never give up on my own life again. Chapter 2. Back at the apartment, I gently put away the admission letter. A honey cake gradually took shape under my hands. This was the Liu family's house. It was convenient for me to work, and Willow and I lived here together. The large red circle on the living room calendar boldly announced, "In 2 weeks, I could leave here and finally live the life I had always wanted." Just as I finished drawing the red circle, Willow returned with Makoto and his niece. When they saw me opening the door, Makoto gave what seemed like a cheerful smile and said, "George, Willow asked me to come up for a visit. I'm causing you trouble again." The little girl, familiar with the house, sniffed the sweet scent and rushed into the kitchen to grab some dessert from the baking tray. She divided it into 3 portions, one for each of them. They were happily sharing it, but they forgot mine. When I walked out of the kitchen, the 3 of them were huddled together, chatting and laughing. The moment the cake entered their mouths, all 3 of them immediately spat it out. "Uncle, it's so bitter." I stood still, unmoving, while Willow ran around, offering tissues and tea. In the end, Makoto forced a smile as he left the house. His usual dimples were nowhere to be seen this time, but he still spoke with an overly tolerant tone. "Willow, George's skills have room for improvement. You two mustn't argue over this." Willow didn't say anything as she sent him out the door. When she came back, I quietly placed another plate of cake in front of me and began to enjoy it in silence. Willow seemed like she wanted to say something but then hesitated. Finally, she explained, "Emma is my sister's orphan child. Before she passed away, she kept asking me to take care of Makoto. The reason I let the child try your desserts is because you're good at making them." I still didn't speak. She sighed and muttered, "If you mind so much, I'll stop bringing them over in the future." The next day, I got up early to pack my bags, preparing to go to the nearby city in a couple of days. Since I had already decided to break off the engagement, it was better to make things clear sooner rather than later. It was out of respect and also to avoid any further entanglements. As I was packing, I came across a little clay doll. It was a gift from Willow when we were kids. Back then, she was so determined, her chubby hands covered in mud as she said, "George, my mom said you'll be my husband when you grow up, so I'm giving this to you." The doll was eventually packed into my suitcase. I didn't want the doll anymore, and I didn't want her either. I stood up and drew a large X on the living room calendar. In 14 days, I would leave here. Chapter 3. That night, Willow came back very late. She glanced at the dishes on the table and casually said, "I've eaten out." A woman who sneaks food doesn't even bother wiping the corners of her mouth clean. After what happened last time, she knew that bringing Makoto home would just make me angry, so she simply ate outside. At least I hadn't made her any food. After dinner, I returned to my room to start organizing materials and make the final preparations before school began. Willow silently appeared behind me. I closed my laptop and asked, "What's wrong?" She was silent for a while before speaking. "The wedding planner in the hotel contacted me. Can we set the date for September 1st? She really knew how to pick a date, perfectly timed with the day I would be starting school. I looked up at Willow. 3 seconds later, she silently avoided my gaze. In my past life, she dealt with our relationship the way she handled work matters, love, marriage, children, and family care. To outsiders, she seemed to be doing everything perfectly, but only I could sense her distance and indifference. It wasn't until I was about to die that I finally realized she was probably unhappy with this marriage from the very beginning. But in the end, I was the only one who withered in this marriage. So, I asked her, "Willow, have you thought it through?" She froze for a moment, clearly not expecting me to ask such a question. Then I heard the exact same answer I had received in the past life. She said, "George, you're the only man I've ever considered my husband." This time, I didn't hesitate. I said, "Marriage is a big deal. We should discuss it with our parents. The date can wait. Let's give it more time." She seemed relieved and quickly changed the topic with a smile. "It's so late, and you're still preparing lesson plans. Don't tire yourself out." Those lesson plans were for the children in the mountain village. In this life, I was going to choose the road I hadn't chosen before. I wanted to see how wonderful George could live without Willow. The next morning, Willow woke up early. When I got up, there was a bowl of crab roe wontons from South City on the table. It was my favorite. She was rarely so considerate. I silently waited for her to make her move. Sure enough, Willow hesitated before speaking. "George, I can't go with you to your parents' place this time. Emma's sick, and Makoto can't handle it alone." That was exactly the excuse I needed to keep her from following me back. It worked out perfectly for both of us. When she saw that I nodded in agreement, Willow hurriedly rushed out the door. I glanced at the calendar on the wall. There were still 13 days left. I was going home today, to break off the engagement. The Liu family had always been kind to me, but it wouldn't be difficult to end the engagement. I just had to tell them that Willow had a bright future ahead of her, and she was about to soar to greater heights. As for me and her, we were no longer a match. The Liu family's living room was quiet and heavy. I sat silently to the side, slowly turning my teacup. Mrs. Liu tried to speak several times but swallowed her words each time. Over the years, she had heard a lot about Makoto. After a long pause, she finally said, "Even if she has feelings for Makoto, you two are still engaged. If she dares to go back on her word, I'll handle it." It was Mr. Liu who decisively spoke. "Since you've chosen to break off the engagement, we respect your decision. However, George, our relationship won't change. We will always regard you as one of our closest juniors." Willow was now the apple of everyone's eye, so even her own parents couldn't understand why I was so determined to break off the engagement. But I understood. For this marriage, They probably had some hidden hopes and expectations too. Now that I was taking the initiative to end it, I was showing my awareness of the situation. This was a good thing. From now on, I would have no more entanglements with Willow or the Liu family. In the end, they were the true family. Chapter 4. The engagement was called off. To prevent any complications, I lied to them, saying Willow was too busy and that she asked me to come back alone. After hearing this, Mrs. Liu genuinely seemed a bit guilty. She urged me to stay at their house for a while longer. I didn't mind. I didn't want to go back to that small apartment and face Willow day in and day out. I stayed at the Liu family's house for 10 days. During those 10 days, Willow only called once. After hearing that I was at the Liu's, she didn't call again. She was still the same as before. When it came to our relationship, she always maintained a businesslike attitude. She wouldn't show concern, nor would she let her guard down. When I returned, I immediately marked 10 large red crosses on the calendar. Only 4 days left. Just 4 more days. I picked up my luggage to go home, but I heard the sound of the door opening. Willow was standing outside, followed closely by Makoto and Emma. When Willow saw me, she seemed a bit surprised and asked, "You're back?" Makoto and Emma, both casually, turned and entered my room. I frowned as I watched him shut the door to my room without hesitation. The living room was a mess, and upon closer inspection, all of my things were scattered around. I looked at Willow. A hint of embarrassment flashed across her face as she explained, "Well, Makoto's house had a leak after the heavy rain the other day, so they're temporarily staying here for a couple of days. I saw you weren't here, and since there weren't too many things, I let him stay in your room for now." I hadn't even told her about the broken engagement yet, and still, she and Makoto acted without any hesitation. When Willow met my cold, distant gaze, she offered, "You can move into my room for now and sleep in my bed." Willow said this while opening her bedroom door. "By the way," she added, "where are your books? There's hardly anything left in your room." Of course, I had moved them out. However, I explained calmly, I sold them. After we get married, I plan to focus more on the family, so many of these things won't be necessary. Willow frowned. "Even if you're married, some of these things could still be useful. Self-improvement is important at any stage. But never mind. If you want to sell them, then do it." She always knew everything, but she didn't care. She watched me get swallowed by that family. As the beneficiary, Willow seemed perfectly at ease, but she shouldn't have been. Enjoying my sacrifices while being infatuated with Makoto, it wasn't right. I pursed my lips and didn't say anything. Seeing my silence, she finally spoke again. "By the way, what did your parents say?" Willow took the bag from my hand. I paused for a moment before answering. "I had someone check the date, and it's not a good one. We can talk about it later." There were still 4 days. I'd use this excuse to buy some time. Once I left, I'd explain everything to her clearly. Willow sighed in relief, then forced a smile to cover up her emotions. She looked at the calendar in the living room and said, "Looks like we'll have to pick a new good date." After that, she hurried off to the kitchen to cook. She didn't even notice what I had drawn on the calendar. I looked at the household registration book on my desk by the window. It was Willow's. Just as I was about to get up and help, I heard the faint sound of 3 people chatting outside. The man's voice was deep, the woman's was sweet, and the child's was adorable. I quietly sat back down. At this point, even though I had broken off the engagement with her, staying under the same roof with her was inappropriate, let alone sharing the same room. But with just 4 days left, I wouldn't be able to find a suitable place to rent in time. After thinking about it, I figured I would eat, then sleep on the floor in the living room before bed. Chapter 5. The next morning, before I had even fully woken up, Emma was already making a ruckus in the living room. Makoto didn't bother with her and continued to clatter away in the kitchen. Willow, on the other hand, just sat on the sofa, smiling as she watched the two of them. Perhaps this was the image of a perfect family in her mind. I used the excuse of needing to buy groceries and hurried out the door. Once outside, I took a deep breath. Neighbor Hongjie saw me and quickly approached, asking, "George, you're back. I thought you went to visit your in-laws." Her words carried a hint of playful teasing. I replied, "Not my in-laws." Neighbor Hongjie froze for a moment, then laughed, thinking I was just being considerate of Willow's reputation. She continued, "Right, not your in-laws yet. You'll have to wait until you're actually married to change how you address them." Noticing the change in my expression, Hongjie stopped talking, clearly feeling hesitant, but she couldn't hold it in. She quietly scolded me. "While you were away these last few days, little Lou brought men home. I asked her about it, and she actually said you were okay with it. That man looks trouble. How could you give your approval? You're not even married yet. Come on, George, open your eyes. Willow has everything going for her. If it weren't for your engagement, I'd be considering introducing her to my nephew. Who wouldn't be attracted to her? She's got one man after another chasing her. You better be careful. Even with all these men around her, Willow was only truly standing by Makoto's side. Makoto didn't need to worry. Willow would give him all the confidence he needed. What surprised me was that Willow had told others it was my decision, as if she were trying to avoid any blame falling on Makoto. She truly thought through everything, but there were some things I couldn't say yet. Seeing that I was silent, Hongjia, noticing my soft nature, clicked her tongue and gave me one last piece of advice to keep an eye out while staying at home. When I returned, the living room was empty. However, there were rustling noises coming from the basement. After a while, Emma bounced upstairs, holding a piece of torn, old paper. I looked closely. It was the portrait I had drawn of Willow last New Year's Eve. The woman in the drawing still had a cold expression, but her lips were curved in a faint, gentle smile. The room looked warm and spring-like, and outside, the fireworks were brilliant. In that moment, Willow's eyes were focused solely on me. At the time, I believed that our married life would be filled with such simple, happy moments, repeated for many years, but I never expected that would be the only time she ever truly looked at me. The paper Emma was holding was already torn and dirty. It was covered with sticky sugar stains. Makoto appeared behind her. He quickly said, "She's just a child. George, you won't hold it against her, right?" Though his tone was gentle, the smugness and disdain in his eyes were unmistakable. I replied coldly, "If you know she's misbehaving, then teach her properly." Makoto seemed taken aback by my response. Children are the best at reading the atmosphere, and Emma immediately charged at me. Her dirty little hand slapped across my shirt, leaving a dark handprint on the fabric. She yelled, "You're not allowed to bully my uncle." Her voice was sharp and piercing. Willow rushed in from outside and immediately pulled Emma into her arms. I didn't look at her. My gaze was fixed on the fallen piece of paper. Willow, following my line of sight, froze for a moment, clearly understanding something. She opened her mouth to say something but swallowed her words. Makoto, clearly pleased with the situation, wore an expression of false innocence. He quickly added, "Willow, I'm sorry. It's all my fault for not watching Emma closely." I suddenly let out a laugh. All three of them turned to look at me. I picked up the torn drawing and held it up to the light. I said, "I didn't draw it right back then. The lighting in the room wasn't this bright." After that, I tossed the drawing into the trash can, expressionless, and walked into the kitchen. Behind me, Willow sharply raised her head and stared at my retreating back in a daze. Chapter 6. I couldn't care less that Emma was still crying and throwing a tantrum. Willow followed me into the kitchen. She hesitated for a long time before finally awkwardly speaking up. "I've been looking for a new place these last few days. Makoto and Emma will be moving out in a couple of days. I know you don't like him, but can you just bear with it a little longer?" Without even thinking, I nodded. Sure. Anyway, there were only 3 days left before I would leave. It was originally Lou's house. How they were going to lock themselves in and live here afterward had nothing to do with me. I agreed too quickly, and Willow seemed to choke on her words. Her face turned an unhealthy shade of green and white, looking rather unpleasant. She probably thought I was angry about what had just happened. She sighed and pulled me back. "Emma is just a child. I've told you so many times. I'm only taking care of them because I promised my sister. Makoto's not doing well either. Can you stop thinking so badly of him?" I sneered. "So, you bring him back and say it's my decision." Willow gasped, opened her mouth to say something, but couldn't get a word out. I laughed. See, no matter how noble her words sounded, her inner turmoil and ugly thoughts couldn't deceive herself. Out of respect for our parents, I didn't want to destroy her career, but that was all I could do for now. The next morning, I woke up early. The scene with Emma yesterday reminded me of something. There were still some of my things in the basement. Taking advantage of the fact that they weren't awake yet, I went downstairs to collect my things. I had lived in this house for several years. Despite starting to pack up more than 10 days in advance, there were still many things left behind. I packed carefully. For the rest of my life, I didn't want any further connection with Willow. Since I had decided to leave, I wanted to do so completely. After gathering everything, I had 3 big bags full. When I opened the door, I saw that Willow had already made breakfast. When she saw the things I was holding, she froze for a moment. "Where are you taking all these things?" she asked. I replied calmly, "Throwing them out. There's too much useless stuff." Willow took a quick glance before looking away. She then turned and knocked on the door of the room next door. "Makoto, get up and bring Emma. Breakfast is ready." At the dining table, as soon as Emma saw me, she hummed in displeasure and scooted her breakfast closer to herself and Makoto. Willow, holding a fried egg, came out and, seeing me, smiled. "You're up? Come on." I made fried eggs. When she turned and saw what was in front of Emma and Makoto, she awkwardly smiled and said, "Good girl, Emma, can you share some with Uncle Wong?" I ignored them and walked straight out of the house. There were only a few days left before the school year started. The necessary paperwork had already been taken care of. I planned to go buy more books and stationery to donate to the children in the mountains. Also, I needed to buy a few more things. Once everything was finished, I booked a room at a hotel. Even though there were only 2 days left, staying under the same roof with Willow, where we were constantly bumping into each other, was just unbearable. Since she thought I was jealous of Makoto, let her think so. It was a perfect excuse for me to move out. Everything was ready, and I returned home. But to my surprise, I saw that Emma was playing with my lesson plan. My mind went blank, and I shouted, "What are you doing?" I grabbed my passport back, and Emma was startled, falling off the table. Her shrill cries immediately brought Makoto running from the other room. He shouted, "What are you doing? Who told you to bully Emma?" Makoto shoved me aside and, in a rush, scooped the child into his arms. I trembled with anger, carefully putting the passport into my bag. I demanded, "Bully her? You should take a look at what she did. Who told you to touch my things? Get out of here." Makoto stood up, still holding Emma, and coldly stared at me. He said, "You're not even married to Willow yet. You don't have the right to make the decisions here." He walked to the door with Emma in his arms, then paused and turned back. He added, "Even if you do marry her, you still won't be able to win against me." The door slammed shut behind him. Makoto's hostility always showed itself when Willow wasn't around. Chapter 7. In the past, I always retreated whenever I faced him. He followed Willow around, gradually becoming independent, and everyone said they made the perfect team. In contrast, I was just a stay-at-home husband. I seemed so much less significant, but as I got the chance to live this life again, I suddenly felt at peace. He may be excellent, but I have my own light to shine. Why should Makoto and I be placed on opposite ends of a scale? Because of Willow. She's not worth it. Is there nothing else in my life apart from Willow? I can go teach in the mountains, bring new knowledge to the children there. I can contribute to the cause of education. Though small, it is meaningful. I can go out and broaden my horizons, gain experience. The mud here will only hinder my steps. As for Makoto, when I first came back, I had thought about getting revenge on him. In my previous life, he ruined my marriage. I thought about causing a scene at his workplace, or exposing him online, but what would that accomplish? As long as Willow wants, she has 100 ways to continue taking care of Makoto. Besides, if Willow wasn't moved, even if Makoto stood in front of her naked, she wouldn't look at him. Why bother? It's just a love gone wrong. I don't want to waste my life dealing with it anymore. So, I said to Makoto seriously, "Listen, no matter what your relationship with Willow is, whether you admit it or not, it's none of my business. I'm not marrying her. If you understand, you should focus more on Willow, not provoke me. Otherwise, I might change my mind at any time." Makoto froze. He waved his hand as if to deny it, but then seemed afraid to really anger me. Finally, he hesitated and went back to his room. I finished packing my things and took one last look at the apartment. Looking around, I could see the traces of other men who had lived here. There was nothing worth missing. I turned and walked out. Back at the hotel, I quickly packed my things and started typing a message to Willow. Though she had treated me poorly in many ways, up until now in this life, we didn't have any major grudges. In the past life, we had both wasted each other's time and ended up in confusion. If possible, I still wanted to clear things up in this life. In the message, I didn't mention where I was going, but simply told her that I had made up my mind to go teach in the mountains. As for our engagement, she didn't want to marry me, and I didn't want to marry her either. We would call it off. From then on, we would go our separate ways. Before I could send the message, there was a knock on the door. I opened it to find Willow standing outside. She seemed out of breath, as if she had been running for a long time. I asked, "What are you doing here?" She gasped a few times before speaking. "Finally found you. I'm glad you're okay." "I'm glad you're okay." I fell silent, expecting her to start blaming me again. "Okay, don't be mad anymore. Come back with me," Willow said, squeezing past me and starting to pack up my things. I turned off my phone screen, hiding it behind my back, but her eyes shifted and landed on the large bags scattered across the floor. Willow's expression changed drastically. She asked, "Where are you going?" I was momentarily stunned, annoyed with myself for not packing things away properly. I quickly made up an excuse. "This afternoon, Emma was rummaging through my stuff. I was worried she'd mess something up, so I brought it out." Seeing my calm demeanor, Willow sighed with relief. She said, "I've already scolded her. Don't argue with a child." I played along and stopped her from packing any further. Willow furrowed her brows and asked, "What's wrong? Are you still upset?" Emma was wrong, but she's just a kid. Don't make a fuss. I just don't understand. Emma's always been so well behaved. Why do you two always clash when you return? Willow seemed like she wanted to say something more, but when she saw me looking at her indifferently, she suddenly stopped talking. I asked her one question. Does Makoto know you came to find me? Willow looked embarrassed and annoyed. What's it got to do with him? Why are you always bringing up Makoto? I didn't answer, but continued. I guess he doesn't know, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't be standing here. I'm your fiancé. If we had an argument, it's only natural for you to come find me. But why? Deep down, don't you want to tell him? Why do you always subconsciously avoid talking about me when you're around him? Every time we argue, you say it's because you're taking care of her for your sister's sake. You've got several sisters, so why does no one else matter as much as you do? Willow, I called her name softly. If you don't love me, just let me go. Willow's face turned pale, and it seemed like her body wavered slightly. After a long pause, she spoke with difficulty. Since you're not going back, then stay here and reflect on it. I'll come back to pick you up in a few days. Willow awkwardly turned and fled. I never meant to wrong you. I'll go back and prepare for the wedding. Hearing the hurried footsteps retreating, I expressionlessly shut the door. How laughable. It was as if, in her eyes, her willingness to prepare for the wedding and marry me was some great favor I should be eternally grateful for. Chapter 8. After Willow left, I bought my train ticket on my phone. Then I went out and had a meal with some colleagues I had been close with. We were all about to go our separate ways, and I didn't know when I'd be back, or what year it would be by then. During the meal, my closest classmate hesitated, as though he wanted to say something but wasn't sure. He knew a little about my situation with Willow. He said, George, didn't you say you were about to get married? Why are you going to teach in the mountains instead? Long-distance relationships are a challenge for many couples. I smiled and shook my head. We're not getting married anymore. Then I raised my glass. To put it bluntly, the world is so big, I want to see more of it. So, here's to youth, friendship, and to myself. When I got home, I took an early shower and went to bed. I thought it would be a restless night, tossing and turning, but surprisingly, I slept soundly through the night, only waking up at dawn. After I woke up, I headed straight for the train station. Just before getting on the train, I sent out the message I had been editing for a long time. As soon as I sent it, my phone started vibrating uncontrollably. I turned it off immediately. When the train started moving, I felt a lightness in my body. For a brief moment, I felt like I saw the version of myself from my previous life, saying, thank you. When the train arrived at the station and I finally stepped onto that vast and desolate land, I suddenly felt like crying. The step I couldn't take in my past life. It seemed so easy to take this time, as long as I wanted it. I collected myself and went to report to the school. In my previous life, I didn't achieve my dream. This time, I would treasure this opportunity. Apart from eating and sleeping, I spent every other moment either in class or preparing lesson plans. During this busy time, I received 3 calls from Willow. The first one came a month after school started. Willow, after much effort, finally got my number. When an unfamiliar number appeared on the screen, I had already guessed it was her. Her voice on the other end of the line was emotional. She said she didn't agree to the annulment of the engagement. She told me that in her heart, I would always be her husband. Half a minute later, I hung up the phone. The second call came 2 months later. In the midst of heavy snow, Willow's tired voice came through. She said she had arranged a house and job for Makoto and had made it clear to him that they would never see each other again. That day, I just listened quietly. Willow's final call came on Christmas Day, in the snowstorm. For the first time, I spoke. I said, Willow, the semester exams were just graded. The kids in my class did great. At the start of the semester, I was struggling, trying to adjust to the local dialect, while also giving lessons and doing home visits with each child. Things weren't going smoothly, and it felt like I kept running into dead ends. I don't know when I'll gain the trust of the parents. Willow listened attentively, breathing lightly on the other end of the line. Then I said, but you know, Willow, I'm happy here. I won't trap myself anymore. Suddenly, Willow's voice choked up. Her tired voice came through. But I miss you. You see, the subject of her sentence was still I. She never cared about the exit for my soul, even in this moment of reconciliation. After this call, I cried my heart out at the foot of the mountain. In my past life, no matter how hard it got, I had never shed a tear. I had been hysterical, angry, regretful, but I never cried. I had almost forgotten what it felt like to shed tears. After wiping away my tears, I threw myself into teaching even more. In my second year of teaching, the villagers started trusting me more and more. Wherever I went, they greeted me warmly. Although rural education still had a long way to go, I knew that if I kept walking down this path, many children would benefit. Every night, when I raised my head from the office desk and looked at the bright moon in the mountains, I felt an inexplicable strength supporting me. The feeling of striving for an ideal was so good. Later, I learned from my classmate that Willow had gotten married. Her partner was Makoto. When my classmate told me, he was careful, perhaps considering my feelings. He explained cautiously, I heard that Willow had been preparing a business trip to the place where you were teaching. When Makoto found out, he went there to cause a scene. I don't know what happened, but the next day, both of them woke up in the same bed. Willow refused to agree, but she was pregnant. I didn't respond. In this life, she still entered marriage for the sake of responsibility. The responsibility of a daughter, the responsibility of a mother, but never the responsibility of a wife. At the end of our conversation, my classmate sighed. When you left to teach, I thought you were losing Willow, but now, I realize that a man living his own life is what's truly wonderful. George, you've earned our admiration now. 5 years later, I finished my teaching mission. I had nurtured a large group of outstanding children. For an ideal, the road is long and difficult. In the 4th year of our marriage, Willow was in a car accident. When she woke up, her memory was stuck in the time when she was deeply in love with her unforgettable first love. She refused to believe that we were married, saying that she had always hated me the most. I tried everything to make her remember our 4 years together, but nothing worked. Later, after an accident, I watched her run desperately toward her unforgettable first love, and I finally got tired. On the day I agreed to the divorce, she suddenly remembered me, but I had already given up. Chapter 1. The day Willow woke up, she was adamant about divorcing me. As I walked to the door with a pot of soup I had simmered all night, she threw a cup of water at my feet. Get out. I don't want to see you. A few drops of scalding hot water splashed onto the back of my hand. I forced a smile, pretending not to care, and said, I made some soup. Could you drink it first, please? Willow turned her back on me, unwilling to look at me, and only said 2 words, get out. Chapter 2. After putting down the soup and leaving, I could no longer maintain the smile on my face. Outside the hospital, I squatted by the roadside, biting a cigarette that wasn't even lit, feeling a bit bitter. This was the 4th year of my marriage to Willow. By then, I had pursued her for nearly 4 years, using all my strength just to have her notice me. But even that tiny bit of affection she had for me is now gone. I thought aimlessly that marrying Willow back then was truly a stroke of luck. Willow had a lover at that time. I couldn't bring myself to break up someone else's relationship. I simply loved Willow silently. Not once did I cross any lines. If Makoto hadn't decided to go abroad, I wouldn't have even had the chance to pursue Willow. After Makoto left the country, I finally started openly courting Willow. It wasn't until 4 years ago that Willow agreed to marry me. That day was just an ordinary dinner for the 2 of us. After the meal, she casually said, George, let's go get our marriage certificate someday. It took me a full 30 seconds to realize I hadn't misheard. When I finally reacted, I quickly said, wait for me, and ran out. In the end, I only bought a bouquet of flowers because I was afraid that if I took any longer, Willow might change her mind and leave. My heart was racing, and my palms were sweaty from excessive nervousness. That night, I knelt on the ground holding the flowers, and my eyes embarrassingly started to well up. I looked up at Willow in her seat, wearing a beautiful dress, radiant and stunning. Whether in the past or now, she has always been the person I love. I made a heartfelt vow to her, word by word. Willow, will you marry me? I promise I will always be good to you. She took my flowers, and my drifting heart finally settled back in place. Later, I proposed to her again. A dreamy, beautiful setting, gifts, rings, and I invited all of our families and friends to witness it. I knew that Willow agreeing to marry me wasn't because she loved me very much. Maybe she just saw how persistent I was, or perhaps it was simply because it was time for her to get married. If Willow wanted to get married, I certainly wouldn't refuse. We've been married for 4 years, and I've always been happily following her around, feeling content just to be with her. It didn't matter if she didn't love me much. My love for her was enough. If Willow hadn't been in a car accident and lost her memory, reverting back to the time when she was deeply in love with her unforgettable first love, Makoto, I think I would have been willing to continue this beautiful dream into the next life. The worst part is not that Willow hates me now or refuses to acknowledge our marriage, but that Makoto has returned. Willow's unforgettable first love, Makoto. Chapter 3. There's no way Willow could hide this from him. Actually, after Willow woke up, both of our parents gently informed her that she had been married to me for 4 years. Even our marriage certificate was laid out in front of her. Willow just glanced at it and didn't look again. So what? If we're married, we can get divorced. Who knows what tricks he used to get me to marry him? And I clearly remember that I love Makoto. The more they talked, the more agitated Willow became. Despite her still recovering body, causing her severe headaches, the doctor said that in such situations, we should go along with the patient and avoid upsetting her as much as possible. After hearing that, I stood silently at the door, staring at Willow in her hospital bed for a long time. Then I told both sets of parents not to mention it to Willow again. I carefully packed the marriage certificate in a box and stored it at the bottom of a cabinet. All the photos we took together over the past 4 years were put away in my suitcase. Every couple's item we had bought during those years was also packed away. I tried to encourage myself, saying it was okay if she forgot me, and it was okay if she hated me. I would just pursue her all over again. But Makoto's return caught me completely off guard. Chapter 4. He hadn't changed much since high school, still always wearing that humble and gentle demeanor, with a face that always radiated warmth and kindness. I felt a deep bitterness inside, thinking absent-mindedly, Makoto might seem gentle, but he's nowhere near as good at taking care of people as I am. Why is Willow so fixated on him? The next day, when I arrived at the hospital, I ran straight into Makoto. It was my old friend David who had told me about Makoto's return, but I hadn't expected him to come directly to the hospital, holding the bone broth I had prepared. I felt a bit lost standing outside the room, watching the two of them. They were talking, completely absorbed in each other, and then Willow suddenly chuckled softly. Her face, which had always been pale, now looked flushed, much more lively. When they saw me enter, their conversation halted, and an awkward silence filled the room. I gripped the thermos tighter and forced a smile as I said gently, "Willow, I made the soup you like. Please have some while it's hot." Before she could respond, Makoto chimed in with a warm voice. "Willow, you're just recovering. You shouldn't drink something as greasy as this. I brought you some supplements." I was stunned. Willow's injuries this time were most severe in her head and foot, so every time I visited, I would prepare bone broth the night before and bring it to her the next day. Even though Willow always told me to get out whenever I came, I knew that after I left, she would drink at least a little. But this time, I suddenly wasn't so sure, so I put the soup aside and casually said, "I'll go out for a smoke," before quickly making my escape. It was a bit embarrassing. Just before I left, I heard Makoto say, "He's still the same." Willow replied indifferently, "He's always like that." Her voice carried a faint tone of annoyance. Chapter 5. After that day, I stopped going to the hospital. Instead, I made different dishes and had my parents bring them to Willow. The day before Willow was discharged, my friend David invited me out for a drink. He knew I had been troubled lately, and said he wanted to show me something interesting. When I arrived, I was surprised to see that Makoto was there too. I paused, realizing what David wanted me to see. David handed me a drink, then said, "If you're going to play the role of a fool, at least don't do it like this." Makoto, my buddy liked Lou, the campus belle, but at that time, you were still her boyfriend. He accepted it and never let his feelings show. Then you up and decided to leave the country, giving up on the relationship. And it took this idiot George 2 more years to finally marry Lou. And now, after an accident, you come back to take advantage of the situation. Are you even human? I don't know what David did to get him there, but he was clearly already drunk. I just pulled him up and said calmly, "Stop drinking, let's go home." David, red-faced, pointed a finger at me, angry at my lack of resolve. "Are you a coward? That's your wife." I remained silent. At that moment, Makoto suddenly stood in front of me. He smiled and said, "So what if Willow broke up with me after I left for abroad? After all these years, doesn't she still love me?" "Oh, and you probably didn't know, did you? She was way cuter when she was with me than she ever was with you." She would. He didn't get to finish his sentence because I had already punched him. Was I angry? Furious? Of course. She's the woman I've loved for nearly 8 years, and because of one accident, everything I've worked for has been wiped away. So who should I blame? Why does someone like him get to win Willow's love without even trying? And if he had it, why didn't he cherish it? What he threw away so carelessly was what I had fought so hard to attain. I cursed under my breath and then put all my strength into the next hit. In the end, Makoto was curled up on the ground holding his head, and I gave him another kick. "Don't you dare talk about your past with her. Who do you think you are?" Chapter 6. The next day, I found out that David's intention was to help me vent, but Makoto had deliberately provoked me. The doctor had scheduled her discharge for the afternoon, but the next morning, just as I was about to leave, I found that Makoto had already brought Willow back. He still had the marks from the beating I gave him last night. I happened to be at the hospital this morning when Willow was being discharged, so I brought her back. Willow stood in front of him, frowning as she looked at me. "George, apologize to Makoto." I was stunned, unable to find the words for a moment. Makoto gently pulled Willow's hand. "Willow, it's fine. George was just drunk last night, and that's why he started a fight with me. There's no need for an apology." His expression was warm, as if he genuinely didn't want us to argue. The scene was so ridiculous that I couldn't help but laugh. I laughed so hard that I ended up coughing. After calming down, I sneered and said, "Makoto, you're truly despicable." Makoto's face changed, but he stayed silent. "George, Makoto's right. You're exactly the same as you were in high school. You haven't changed at all." Willow's expression was filled with disgust, as if I were nothing more than trash on the side of the road. "In high school, you were just a troublemaking student who only knew how to fight and smoke. And now, you're still the same. Still the same person I can't stand." I closed my eyes lightly, replaying her words in my mind like a form of self-torture. That's right. I finally understood. The Willow who had lost 4 years of memories with me only felt disgust towards me. Just like when she first saw me in high school. She would have rather walked around me than acknowledge my presence. But back then, even a fleeting glance from her was enough to make me happy for a long time. I lowered my head weakly and finally spoke in a hoarse voice, clinging to the last shred of my dignity. Tell him to leave. This is our home, not his. Makoto, having achieved his goal, said a few gentle words to Willow before putting down his things and leaving. The next day, Willow handed me the signed divorce papers. This is the divorce agreement. Look it over, and if there's nothing wrong, sign it. I froze. Then I turned away. I won't sign it. Willow frowned, clearly irritated. Why won't you sign? If it's about money, we'll split everything 50-50ths. You can even keep this house, and I'll give you an extra $1 million. This house was one I had bought, meant to be our marital home, and it had taken up most of my savings. I took a deep breath and pushed the divorce papers back to her. I won't sign. Willow looked at me angrily, as if she couldn't understand why I refused. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore and shouted, "But I don't even like you. I love someone else. Won't you sign even knowing that?" Chapter 7. After she said that, the living room fell into a long, heavy silence. I swallowed the pain in my heart and hoarsely retorted, "You liked me once. You just forgot." Willow froze. In the end, she stood up and walked away, leaving behind only one sentence. "Suit yourself. Waste your time if you want." I sat alone in the empty living room, suddenly uncertain how much longer I could hold on. After that day, Willow and I fell into a cold war. She wouldn't eat the meals I prepared, and while she slept in the master bedroom, I slept in the guest room. The injury from the car accident still prevented Willow from standing for long periods. Knowing she wouldn't swallow her pride, I would cook every day and then head to the studio. Only when I came back and saw that she had finished the food would I finally relax. When David found out, he cursed at me over the phone. "You're really being a simp, aren't you?" I was kneading dough at the time, and his words made me pause for a moment. In the end, I replied bitterly, "David, she just doesn't remember." In fact, I had never told anyone that during the 4 years after Willow agreed to marry me, she had never been like this. During those 4 years, Willow was a very good partner. We would date, kiss, and love each other like any normal couple. On winter nights when I picked her up from work, she would jump into my arms in her thick coat and slip her hands into mine obediently. On the way home, she would chatter away about the funny things that happened at work. We'd roll dice to decide who would cook and who would wash the dishes. Though in the end, I usually ended up doing both. We'd go grocery shopping together, and she'd make me change my avatar to something silly. We'd wear pajamas and curl up on the couch together, watching movies and betting on who the killer was. She would get angry, refusing to eat and changing my avatar back, telling me not to change it again. But at work, she would transform back into the calm and poised manager Lou. During those 4 years, she would decisively reject any suitors who came her way. So I had once been loved by her, and letting go now was anything but easy. I wanted to try a little harder. After all, 8 years had passed, so what were 1 or 2 more? I found every excuse to take Willow to the places we visited during those 4 years of marriage. I naively thought that maybe, just maybe, she might remember. But each time, without fail, she would either be called away by a phone call from Makoto or spend the entire time chatting with him on her phone. Eventually, Willow stopped going out with me altogether. I would also try to talk to her about those 4 years, but Willow rarely responded. If I talked too much, she would impatiently interrupt and tell me to stop. Seeing her engrossed in her phone, chatting with Makoto, I suddenly fell silent. Chapter 8. In 2 weeks, it would be Willow's birthday. I had booked the venue long in advance, decorating the private room beautifully to suit Willow's tastes. On the morning of her birthday, I got up early to cook her a bowl of longevity noodles. After watching her finish eating, I handed her a small box. "Willow, happy birthday." Recently, Willow and I had slowly returned to something like a friendly state. She wasn't as resistant to me anymore, and the argument about the divorce seemed to have been deliberately forgotten by both of us. But deep down, I knew clearly that we could never go back to those 4 years. Willow thanked me and then asked, "Can I open it now?" I nodded. Inside was a dress. The moment I saw it, I knew my Willow would look stunning in it. When she unfolded the dress, a spark of delight flickered in her eyes. The tightness in my chest loosened instantly. Then I said, "I've booked a dinner at your favorite restaurant tonight. If you like, you could wear this." Later, I accompanied Willow to her parents' house for lunch and stayed until the evening. In the evening, Willow and I were supposed to head to the restaurant I had reserved, but just as we were about to leave, she received a call and hesitated. "I need to go out to see a friend." "You go ahead. I'll be there soon." As she reached for her phone, I saw the name on the screen, Makoto. I watched her leave without even giving me a chance to say anything, not even a single glance back. I wanted to stop her, to ask if she would really come back after meeting him. But deep down, all I wanted was to hold her back and keep her with me. In the end, I went to the restaurant alone. Willow said she would come, so I waited for her. That night, I waited from 6 p.m. onwards. I sent her texts and called her. There was no response, and eventually, her phone was turned off. I waited until midnight. 2 waiters, awkwardly pushing each other, finally came up to me. "Mr. Wong, we're sorry, but the restaurant closes at 1 a.m. I was stunned. The food, which had been reheated half an hour ago, had gone cold again. The cake I made myself was left in a corner, and the roses had lost their freshness. The waiters exchanged pitying glances that only deepened my embarrassment. But what hurt the most deep down, it was that, "Willow, you said you would come. Why did you lie?" That night, when I went home, Willow didn't return. I sat alone in the living room for the entire night. Chapter 9. The next day, I saw Willow, whom I had waited for all night, on Makoto's social media. Last night, Makoto had taken Willow to a music festival concert. She was wearing Makoto's jacket, her smile carefree and radiant in a way I hadn't seen in a long time, and the warmth and joy in her eyes were almost tangible. The timing couldn't have been worse. Just as I put down my phone, Willow walked in. She looked at me on the sofa, her expression momentarily stunned. Then, as if remembering something, she spoke with a hint of panic. "I'm sorry about last night. I forgot. After a sleepless night, I was genuinely exhausted." I tried to force a smile, wanting to say something, anything, whether it was a question or an expression of anger, but I realized I had nothing to say. I felt nothing. Seeing my silence, she hurriedly added, "Last night, Makoto mentioned wanting to go to the music festival, so I went with him. Then my phone died, so I couldn't call you. You probably didn't wait long for me and went back early, right?" I lowered my gaze and replied softly, "Yes, I understand." The atmosphere was too stifling, so I stood up. "I'm going to the studio." As I walked past Willow, she suddenly called out to me, "George, don't you have anything else you want to ask?" What should I ask? I didn't want to ask anything. No. With that, I left. At that moment, I suddenly remembered a conversation I had with David. "What makes you think she'll ever remember you?" How did I answer back then? I was so confident. I believe in her. But Willow, I think I'm reaching my limit. After that day, both Willow and I became busy. I had my photography studio, and Willow was tied up with the year-end tasks at her company. Sometimes, we were so busy that we didn't even have dinner together for 2 or 3 weeks. Meanwhile, Makoto posted several photos on social media of him having meals with Willow. I knew he was doing it for me to see. As I looked at those photos, a strange sense of indifference began to creep in. It felt like, for a long time, my life had revolved entirely around Willow. I had told David that I wanted to try my best to help Willow remember me, but somewhere along the way, without me realizing it, that thread had loosened. At the end of the month, our high school class president suddenly organized a reunion. I hadn't planned to go, but the class president sent me several private messages saying he needed to talk to me and asked me to come. So, I cleared my schedule for that night. Deep down, I wondered if Willow would attend. On the night of the reunion, Willow did come, but she was with Makoto. When Willow and I got married, we kept it low-key. Only a few close friends knew, and almost none of our high school classmates were aware. So now, seeing the two of them walk in together, everyone assumed Willow and Makoto were a couple. One of the drunk male classmates blurted out, "Wow, you two really ended up together after all these years." I watched as Willow opened her mouth to say something, but Makoto quickly interjected, "It's been so long, we can't get away without having a drink together, can we?" His vague response painted their relationship in an ambiguous light. I looked at Willow, silently hoping for something, but there was nothing. She just smiled and joined the conversation with others. She didn't even glance at me, as if I was just another high school classmate to her. The thread in my heart grew lighter and lighter, almost slipping out of my grasp. Chapter 10. Halfway through the reunion, the class president sent me a message, asking me to step outside for a chat. By the time I finished my cigarette, Diego, the class president, finally spoke up. "You liked Willow in high school, didn't you?" This wasn't exactly a secret. It wasn't surprising for anyone to have liked Willow back then. But his next sentence left me stunned. "The one who scared off the troublemakers in the alley behind the school and who left candies on her desk for an entire semester, that was you, wasn't it?" I blurted out. "How did you know?" Diego patted my shoulder. "George, I'm sorry. I saw it, and I knew it was you. But when Willow thought it was Makoto who did all that, I didn't step forward to tell her the truth." For a moment, it was as if I couldn't hear anything. It felt like I had missed a step on the stairs, and my heart skipped a beat. It took me a while to come back to my senses. But before she got together with Makoto, I wrote her a letter telling her everything. How could she think it was Makoto? Diego frowned. equally puzzled. I don't know about that. But when Makoto celebrated getting together with Willow and took us out to dinner, he claimed he was the one who did all those things. A bad feeling suddenly washed over me. Before I could fully process what Diego had said, the smell of smoke filled the air, and the sudden blare of alarms sent everyone rushing out of the restaurant. There was a fire. I froze for a moment, then instinctively ran back inside. Willow was still in there. Diego grabbed my arm instinctively. "What are you doing? It's dangerous in there, don't go in." I shook him off. "Willow is still inside." Because we didn't want to disturb anyone with our noise, the waiter had seated our group in a private room on the far corner of the second floor. By the time I ran in, the first floor of the restaurant was in chaos. People were scrambling to get out, frantic and desperate. The flames were growing, and when I reached the second floor, I realized they hadn't noticed the fire outside. A few people were too drunk to stand, and after I yelled that there was a fire and we needed to get out, those who were still sober began waking the others and dragging them out. I scanned the room and saw Willow. I grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the exit. We didn't exchange a word. She held onto my hand tightly and followed me. As we passed the restroom, she suddenly hesitated and said, "Makoto, he just went to the bathroom." Chapter 11. I stopped in my tracks, seeing the panic in her eyes but saying nothing. Feeling her tug toward the restroom, I tightened my grip on her hand and led her outside. "There's no time. We need to get out." But Willow tried to protest, but I firmly pulled her out with me. Once outside, the firefighters had arrived, and the flames were gradually being brought under control. It was only then that I noticed a large scrape on my arm, though I hadn't felt it before. Now, a sharp pain shot through me. As soon as she was outside, Willow began searching the crowd, thinking about what Diego had said. I was desperate for answers, ignoring the fact that we had just escaped a life-threatening situation. I asked urgently, "Willow, do you know who left those candies on your desk for an entire semester? Who chased away those troublemakers?" "Makoto." The rest of my words got stuck in my throat. I watched as Willow ran toward Makoto, who was standing in the distance. Her eyes were red as she sighed in relief. "You're okay. Thank goodness." The sight of them embracing so tightly stung my eyes. The fragile thread that had been holding on in my heart finally snapped. The scene was all too familiar. I remembered a day in high school when Makoto got into a fight, and I was passing by while working a part-time job. By coincidence, I knew the guys Makoto was fighting with. When Willow arrived and saw me, she immediately assumed I had sent those guys to cause trouble for Makoto. She looked at me with anger. "George, I regret ever helping you. You bully your classmates, always causing trouble. Don't you know how to show respect? I can't believe I once thought you could change." The disgust in her eyes was so clear that I couldn't find the words to respond. I wanted to say it wasn't true. I wasn't causing trouble. I didn't start that fight, and I hadn't sent anyone to bully Makoto. I wanted to say that I wasn't as bad as she thought. That day, my boss had praised me for being diligent, and I was saving every penny I earned from my part-time job. I wasn't disrespectful at all, but it was as if I'd lost my voice. My throat was dry, and I couldn't say a word. I looked at Makoto, hoping he would explain that it had nothing to do with me, but Makoto just glanced at me and said nothing. All I could do was watch as Willow supported Makoto and walked away, step by step. Initially, I hadn't planned on writing a letter to explain that I was the one who had done all those things, but I didn't want Willow to think I was like that. I didn't want her to feel that being liked by someone like me was unbearable. I agonized over it for a week, writing dozens of drafts before finally managing to write a letter that didn't feel too forced. In it, I explained that, yes, I had a temper at first, but I had never bullied anyone. I confessed that I had liked Willow for a long time. I wrote that it was me who had chased off those troublemakers after night study, and I ran away because I was afraid she would misunderstand. I also wrote that I was the one who left those different candies on her desk every day for an entire semester when she was feeling down. There was so much more I wanted to write, but what did I want to say the most? I wanted to say, "Willow, I like you so much. I'm not that bad. Really, won't you give me a chance?" But tonight, Diego told me that Willow never knew. She never knew it was me. My letter was probably lost in some corner, trampled on, and covered in dirt. My love and courage over all these years had never been known. But when I saw Willow running toward Makoto in that life-or-death moment, so resolute, whether she knew or not didn't seem to matter anymore. I didn't care anymore. I think, it's time to let go. My love for you was never known, and in your memory, I remain the same person you've always seen me as, unremarkable, unchanged. Whether Willow knew or not, it doesn't matter anymore. I think, I can't go on with her anymore. That day, I looked at the two of them from afar and then turned to leave. I went to the hospital to get my arm bandaged, and by the time I got home, it was almost 1 a.m. When I returned, the lights were on, and Willow's eyes lit up when she saw me. "You're back." I didn't say anything, just went to the bathroom to wash my face and clear my head. She followed me step by step, talking as she went. I couldn't find you earlier. I looked everywhere. I tried calling, but you didn't answer. You must be tired tonight. I brought some food back for you. Come and eat. What happened to your hand? Did you just get hurt? Did you go to the hospital yourself? Why didn't you tell me? I would have gone with you. I interrupted her. Willow, I agree to the divorce. I thought that with the way I felt about Willow, I would never say those words in my life, but I had overestimated myself. I think, Willow, this is the end for us. Let's put a period on these 10 years of my youth. Chapter 12. After saying those words, I turned and left. It's too late tonight. I'll pack my things and leave tomorrow. Willow reached out to stop me. Why did you suddenly change your mind and decide to divorce? My head felt like it was going to explode. I didn't want to say a word. I gently pulled away from her grip. You can have the lawyer draft a new agreement. I don't want your money. You can do whatever you want with the assets. I was utterly exhausted. My body felt like a rusted machine, too difficult to move. Behind me, I heard Willow's trembling voice. George, are you sure? You're the one who asked for the divorce. There's no going back. I didn't stop walking. Yes, I won't regret it. Lying in bed, I thought, I really need to take a break. That night, I had many dreams, of my childhood, of Willow in high school, and of the Willow I married during those 4 years. But one thing remained the same, the disdain in her eyes when she looked at me. When I woke up, it was almost 11 a.m. I took my time getting up and started packing. I didn't have much to pack, so it didn't take long. When I went downstairs, I thought that given how eager Willow was to get divorced, I'd have the papers by this morning. But instead, there was breakfast on the table. I was stunned. Willow was sitting on the sofa, acting like nothing had happened. I made breakfast. You should try some. Not too long ago, I would have been overjoyed at this, but now, I felt no happiness at all. I only felt a deep sense of resignation. In the end, I shook my head and declined. No, I'm not hungry. Later, when you have time, send me a message so we can finalize the divorce. Makoto. I don't think he's someone you should trust with your future. You might want to reconsider. On the night of the restaurant fire, if Makoto had really been in the restroom, I wouldn't have ignored someone's life, but in my hurried run back into the restaurant, I saw Makoto rushing out of the restroom. After saying that, I picked up my suitcase and headed for the door. I heard the sound of something shattering behind me, and Willow shouted, George, if you walk out that door, don't ever come back. It was still the house I had lived in for 4 years, and as I stepped out, a sharp pain stabbed through my heart. I told myself, George, it's really over this time. I went back to my studio, planning to finish the photo shoots I had scheduled with a few clients over the next few days. While I was busy with work, I kept waiting for a message from Willow, but she never sent anything, until one night, I finally received a message from her. George, there was a burglar at the house. I'm scared. Chapter 13. Without much hesitation, I dropped the camera and rushed to Willow's place. I arrived as quickly as I could. When I got there, the living room was a mess. Blankets and pillows were scattered all over the floor. The security guards and police were at the door. Willow was sitting on the floor. I steadied my breathing and looked her over from head to toe. Seeing no signs of injury, I felt slightly relieved. I asked softly, can you stand? Willow shook her head and reached out to wrap her arms tightly around my neck. With no other choice, I lifted her and carried her to the sofa. After we finished explaining the situation to the police, I turned on the TV for her to watch while I started cleaning up the living room. As I cleaned, I gave her instructions. You should stay at your parents' place for now. Don't come back until the burglar is caught. When you do come back, remember to take the keys out of the door, and if you hear anything, stay in your room and don't come out. Call the police. If you're ever in danger, call the police immediately. I can't always be there to answer your call. As I spoke, I suddenly stopped. I realized that Willow might not want to hear me say these things. George, my stomach hurts. Instinctively, I asked, you haven't eaten dinner yet, have you? She nodded, and I sighed as I headed to the kitchen. I started cooking noodles and then suddenly realized what I was doing. A pair of hands wrapped around my waist, and I froze. My first instinct was to push her away, but Willow's voice came out in a sob. George, I regret it. Can we not get divorced, please? I didn't say anything. I just quietly finished cooking the noodles and brought them to the table for her to eat. After she finished, I finally spoke. Willow, you need to eat properly even when you're alone. One person may have lost their memory, but it seemed that the habits ingrained in their soul couldn't be changed. Willow had gotten used to having me around. She was used to someone making her dinner while gently scolding her when she was hungry, or reminding her to put on more clothes when she was cold. When that person suddenly disappears, she might feel lost, but in the end, I think, this is just a false memory. Chapter 14. When my friend David found out that I was getting a divorce from Willow, he was silent for a long time. Finally, he sighed and asked, are you sure? I stared blankly at my drink. I just nodded in response. I'm planning to close the studio for a while next year and go traveling for a bit. There was just one thing left to do. Willow hadn't given me the divorce papers yet. Reluctantly, I had to send her a message asking when she would be available, but Willow kept putting it off. She'd either say she had work or needed to have dinner with her parents. After a few attempts, I understood what she was doing. I got so busy with the year-end rush of clients that I ended up forgetting about the divorce. Before I knew it, the new year had arrived. During this time, our parents started noticing that something was wrong between us. We usually celebrated the holidays together, but this year it didn't feel right. So I explained the situation to my parents in advance. Then, on the day before New Year's Eve, I got a call from Willow. "George, can you come home for dinner tonight?" She quickly added, as if afraid I might refuse, "My parents want to see you." Since she had even involved her parents, I had no choice but to agree. That evening, I picked up some gifts and then went to Willow's office to pick her up for dinner at her parents' house. The dinner went well enough, and we didn't mention anything about the divorce in front of her parents. After dinner, I helped Willow clean up the dishes before telling her I was leaving. Willow put on her coat to walk me out. We didn't say anything until we reached the parking lot. Then she finally spoke. "When I first woke up, I wanted to divorce you." I tried to ignore the pain in my heart and responded lightly, "Yeah, you wouldn't even drink the soup I made and told me to get out." Willow smiled a little, but then her smile faded, and she fell silent for a moment before continuing. "After I woke up, I kept thinking I loved Makoto, but when I was with him, I wasn't as happy as I thought I'd be. After that night when you wanted to divorce me, I felt strange, and it hurt. George, it's so strange. I don't even remember loving you, so why does it hurt so much?" She held on to me. "George, can we not get divorced? Can we start over?" My heart felt heavy. Finally, I took a red envelope from my bag and placed it in her hand. "Willow, Happy New Year, but we can't go back. Not all mistakes can be undone, and I'm not willing to keep putting myself through this over and over again." After the new year, I found myself with more free time. Willow, on the other hand, started messaging me more frequently after that night. Sometimes she would come to the studio to find me. Other times she would use some excuse to call me over. This continued until last week. This week, however, the messages from Willow suddenly stopped. I only received one message from her. She asked to meet at a cafe this week. When I arrived, Willow was wearing a dark coat, a scarf, and her hair was draped over her shoulders. When she saw me, she smiled. "George, you're here." That's when I realized something was off. I hesitated. "You've regained your memory, haven't you?" Willow silently nodded. Chapter 15. After learning that Willow had regained her memory, we both fell into silence. She looked at me and said, "I'm sorry for everything that happened after I lost my memory." I sighed, feeling a whirlwind of emotions. What if Willow had regained her memory sooner? Or what if I had held on just a little longer? But there were no what-ifs. I had reached my limit. Willow remained silent for a while before she spoke again. "Makoto returned to the country because he lost money trying to start a business abroad and, after hearing about my situation, he rushed back hoping I would give him money." Hearing this, I felt a sense of relief. Since Willow had already found out, she wouldn't be with Makoto anymore. And knowing Willow, she wouldn't let Makoto get away with it either. After discussing what needed to be discussed, we inevitably brought up the topic of divorce. Looking at the woman I had loved for nearly 10 years, I felt nothing but regret and bitterness. "About the divorce, I'm really sorry. Are you sure you want to go through with it?" I nodded. After signing the agreement, we scheduled to go to the Civil Affairs Bureau the following Monday. But just before I left, Willow spoke softly. "I didn't know it was you who chased away those troublemakers and left candies on my desk for an entire semester. I always thought it was Makoto." Her voice trembled. "George, I'm sorry. It seemed that no one was really at fault. It was just bad luck on my part. Always missing the mark." I later found out that Makoto had thrown away the letter I had written. When I learned this, I stayed silent for a long time, saying nothing. That night, as I was going to bed, I could only think, my luck was really terrible back then. After the divorce was finalized, I followed through with my plan to close the studio and stopped accepting photography jobs. I began planning my travel itinerary for the year. Then I heard from David about Makoto's situation. Apparently, he was being hounded by creditors and had no money to repay them. Desperate, he had resorted to asking old classmates for loans, one by one, but everyone knew what kind of person he was now, so no one was willing to lend him anything. Some even took the opportunity to kick him while he was down. His reputation was completely ruined. He had always cared about his reputation the most, and now it was utterly destroyed. When David told me this, he was practically gloating. Serves him right for taking advantage of others. Karma's finally caught up with him. I smiled and hung up the phone, then went back to planning my trip. I ended up traveling for a whole year. I saw many sights I'd never had the chance to see before. During that year, I still thought about Willow sometimes. And I often felt a sense of melancholy and regret about our relationship. I couldn't blame her, but it seemed I couldn't quite forgive either. So I decided to leave it to time. We could be strangers, classmates, friends, maybe even enemies, but it seemed we could no longer be lovers. Perhaps one day, when I've truly let go, I'll sit down with Willow again, have a drink, and chat about the old days. I'll talk about all the foolish things I did when I loved her for those years, and maybe I'll tell her about the year I finally let her go.